Welcome to the EcoCampus guide to measuring your Scope 3 transport carbon dioxide emissions from staff or student commuter travel using the Carbon Manager application. Both staff and student commuting have been recommended as optional, unlike business travel, which has been recommended as mandatory. Providing you have the correct data, you can use Carbon Manager to report on all your commuter travel emissions. Data collected will vary between organisations. However, travel surveys are perhaps the most useful form of data collection. Of course, you may have other records which you can make use of. When conducting the travel surveys, you should align the questions to the carbon source categories in Carbon Manager. So here's an example of some data collected from the fictitious Wessex University. The sample is from 2,590 students, a rather optimistic 20% of the entire university. When reporting on your Scope 3 emissions, you should align survey questions, for example mode of transport, to the categories in Carbon Manager. Other information, such as distance travelled, can be found on various other websites such as the transport.info website or other online maps. The miscellaneous modes of transport are either not strictly speaking a regular form of transport or do not have an associated carbon footprint. As you would expect, cycling and walking have no associated carbon emissions. However, foreign students may return home once per year by air, and you could include this in your emissions reporting. Remember, the data taken is from a sample of students at the university. It is highly unlikely that you will get a 100% response rate from staff or students. Incentives can be useful to encourage a higher response rate, for example, vouchers or a gym membership perhaps. The sample size should aim to generate a confidence interval of plus or minus 5% and a confidence level of 95%. The survey should take place no less than once every 2 years, ideally annually, and should be conducted at the same time period to ensure consistency. In this case, a formula is applied to the sample data to work out the actual figures for the student population. This is the percentage of students multiplied by the total number of staff at the university. This is then multiplied by the kilometres per student for that particular mode of transport to give a representative sample of the whole population. Now you need to set up your commuting sites in Carbon Manager. To avoid any confusion, you should name your sites after the scopes you are reporting on. These will be HEFCE Scope 3 Academic and Support Staff Commuting and HEFCE Scope 3 Student Commuting. This is because commuting is very difficult to attribute to a building, and HEFCE recommends separating the student commuting and the staff commuting out from each other. This is how to set it up on Carbon Manager. From the home screen or wherever you are in the application, click Tools and then click Site Manager. Move down to the bottom right hand side of the screen and click Create Site. Simply type in your HEFCE scope name into the site name and fill out the other fields with not applicable. You may also want to leave a comment advising the site is only to be used for the Scope 3 reporting scope. Finally, click Save. This will add the created site to the list already shown in the middle of the screen. You should now repeat this process for your staff or student commuter travel. The next step is to create the actual scopes. These should again be called the same as your sites, so HEFCE Scope 3 Academic and Support Staff Commuting and HEFCE Scope 3 Student Commuting. The carbon sources included within the scope will depend on the data you have. Here's how to set it up in Carbon Manager. From the Tools menu, click the Energy Scope Editor button. Next, click Create Custom Energy Scope on the right hand side of the screen. Type in your scope name in the field provided. In this case, I have copied and pasted. You should then select the transport by clicking the tick box next to the relevant transport method. I have pre-sorted these options, but to arrange methods alphabetically by category or name, click the column heading. Obviously, the transport methods you select will vary depending on what you have data for. Finally, click Create Scope. You are now ready to enter your data. Click the Data Manager button and select the relevant HEFCE scope from the Carbon Sources menu. Select the relevant transport option for which you have the data for example, bus, local bus. Select the relevant corresponding sites from the drop-down list in the far right-hand side, and then click the pen icon to start entering your data. You should divide any yearly data by 12 to get a monthly average and enter this from the start to the end of the relevant academic year. Ensure you have the correct year selected from the drop-down menu and the correct units. Enter your data and finally click Save to save your data.